Naruto Uzumaki was still behind the Hokage desk when Tsunade entered with 2 cups of tea. Age had slowed them both, but the office looked much the same as it had when she once handed the position to him. They spent the evening remembering old friends and the years that had carried Naruto from a hated child to the 7th Hokage. Eventually, Naruto admitted that one question had stayed with him. He would never erase the life he had lived. Yet, he sometimes wondered how different his childhood might have been if even one adult had believed in him from the beginning and made sure he did not return to an empty apartment every night. Tsunade watched him over her cup and said that if life ever gave them a second chance, she would find him early. This time, she would not let him grow up alone. Naruto smiled and called it a dangerous promise. A moment later, Tsunade's cup slipped from her fingers. Naruto rose so quickly that his chair struck the wall, but a sharp pressure tore through his skull before he could reach her. The office twisted out of focus, and darkness swallowed them both. He woke with his face pressed against a cheap pillow, confused by the stiff mattress and the faint smell of instant ramen. His right hand slid beneath the blanket, searching for the edge of the Hokage robe he had been wearing, and found an oversized orange shirt instead. Naruto sat up so quickly that the room spun. The room felt impossibly small. A chipped cup sat beside an old kettle, and a pile of academy worksheets leaned under a crooked shelf. Naruto stared at them until the characters blurred, then looked down at hands that were small again, with short fingers, smooth skin, and none of the stiffness he had carried into old age. He stumbled out of bed and nearly fell because his legs were shorter than his memory expected. The mirror above the sink showed a child with bright blonde hair, blue eyes, and 3 whisker marks on each cheek. Naruto grabbed the edge of the sink. He knew that face. He had spent years hating it in photographs because it reminded him how alone he had been. A minute later, he was running down the stairs of the apartment building. Morning air hit him in the face. Merchants were opening shutters. Shinobi crossed rooftops. A woman carrying vegetables noticed him and shifted to the other side of the street, with an old familiar discomfort that made his stomach tighten. Naruto barely slowed. He reached the main road, turned toward the mountain, and stopped. 4 stone faces watched over Konoha: Hashirama, Tobirama, Hiruzen, and Minato. There were only 4. People moved around Naruto while he understood that he had returned to the years before graduation, before Team 7, and before almost everything that had shaped his life. The first rush of disbelief gave way to instinct. He checked his chakra. The result almost made him laugh. His coils felt healthy, but they belonged to a child. The enormous reserves he remembered were not there yet. His body had none of the strength, speed, or conditioned reflexes of the man who had become Hokage. His mind knew how to form a Rasengan. His arm could not yet support the control and output he remembered using without thought. The limitation felt strangely fair, even if the situation itself was impossible. There was one more thing he needed to know. Naruto closed his eyes. The familiar inner world rose around him as a damp stone corridor covered by shallow water. The great gate stood in the darkness ahead, and 2 red eyes opened behind it. Naruto's chest tightened. For one stupid instant, he forgot the years between this moment and the friendship they would one day build. Kurama. The name echoed through the chamber. The fox moved closer to the bars, his lip lifted over enormous teeth. Naruto expected irritation, perhaps a complaint about being disturbed. Instead, the emotion rolling through the bars was raw hatred. Kurama demanded to know how a human child knew his name. Naruto did not answer at first. He understood immediately. Kurama had not come back with him. The creature behind the gate was the Kurama from this world, still trapped, still furious, still years away from trusting the boy who carried his prison. Naruto forced his hands to unclench. He told Kurama that he did not want anything from him. That only made the fox more suspicious. Naruto left the inner world with a hollow ache under his ribs. He had been given back everyone he might lose, but that did not mean they remembered him. Then he thought of Tsunade, and the memory of their final conversation made him sit upright on the edge of his bed. If this was really the past, then Tsunade was already an adult. She had left Konoha years ago. He would not meet her for a long time. Naruto rubbed both hands over his face. Of course he had come back too early. A knock from the hallway made him glance at the clock. Academy. He was late. Some habits apparently survived reincarnation better than others. By the time Naruto reached the classroom, Iruka was standing at the front, with a vein showing at his temple. The familiar sight struck Naruto harder than he expected. Iruka looked young. Far too young. His vest was clean, his face unlined, and both of his hands were alive, and warm as he slapped a piece of chalk against the board. Naruto almost crossed the room just to hug him. He stopped himself in time. Iruka demanded an explanation for his lateness. Naruto gave the first excuse that came into his head, something about a broken kettle and a cat on the stairs. The class laughed. Iruka stared at him with the tired patience Naruto remembered so well, and ordered him to sit down. Naruto turned toward the desks. Then he saw the girl. She was blonde, around his age, and sitting near the window, in a seat that had been empty the day before. According to the childhood memories now tangled beneath his adult ones, her hair was tied back simply. She wore a pale training shirt and dark shorts. Nothing about her should have stopped him, except her eyes. Naruto knew that look. He had seen it across hospital rooms, war councils, gambling tables, and a Hokage office many years in the future. The girl stared at him so intensely that Iruka had to call her name before she looked away. Tsunade. Naruto's heartbeat stumbled. That could not be right. The Tsunade he knew should have been decades older. The girl waited until Iruka turned back to the board. Then, she picked up her bag, moved to the empty seat beside Naruto, and sat down. Her fingers tightened around a pencil. She had woken that morning with two childhoods in her head. One belonged to the 7-year-old daughter of a small Senju branch family, had recently moved back to central Konoha after her father received a new administrative post. The other belonged to a woman who had lived through wars, buried loved ones, served as 5th Hokage, and grown old enough to sit across from Naruto Uzumaki during what should have been an ordinary evening. She remembered darkness. Then she had opened her eyes in a child's room, while a mother she had never known in her first life called her down to breakfast. All morning, she had been waiting to reach the academy, waiting to see whether Naruto was here, waiting to learn whether he remembered too. She leaned close enough that no one else should have heard and asked the only question that mattered. "Do you remember me?" Naruto slowly turned his head. He looked at her face, the blonde hair, the brown eyes, the tiny mark on her forehead, where she had bumped into a shelf during this body's earlier childhood. The furious little crease already forming between her brows. Recognition hit him all at once. He jumped to his feet so fast that his chair crashed backward. "Granny Tsunade, it's you?" The class went silent. Then it exploded with laughter. A boy near the back nearly fell off his seat. Sakura covered her mouth. Even Sasuke looked over with visible confusion. Tsunade's face turned red from her collar to her hairline. Her fist struck the top of Naruto's head before Iruka could react. Naruto hit the desk with both hands and yelped. Tsunade hissed that if he called her granny again, while they were the same age, she would personally make sure his second childhood was shorter than his first. Naruto looked up at her through watering eyes. Then he grinned. The grin changed her expression instantly. The anger remained, because Naruto had earned it. But her shoulders dropped. He remembered. That was enough. After class, they escaped to an unused training field behind the academy. Naruto arrived first and paced in a circle until Tsunade came through the trees carrying 2 paper bags from a food stall. She threw one at him before saying anything. Naruto caught it by reflex. Warm rice and grilled fish filled the air. He stared at the bag. Tsunade told him he had skipped breakfast. Naruto asked how she knew. She pointed at his shirt. A dried streak of instant ramen broth sat near the collar. Naruto laughed so hard he had to sit down. The sound surprised both of them. For several minutes, they simply ate. Then they compared memories. They remembered the same final evening. They remembered the first life. Tsunade remembered serving as 5th Hokage. Naruto remembered becoming 7th. Their memories matched on people, wars, friendships, and losses. But Tsunade also carried 7 years of memories from this new childhood. Her parents were Haru and Mika. Haru descended from one of the smaller Senju lines that had gradually blended into the wider village. He had been a Chunin until a leg injury ended active service. Mika worked at Konoha Hospital as a medical shinobi. The family had spent several years near a regional administrative post and had only returned to the center of the village this week. That explained why Naruto did not remember seeing her before. It did not explain why she existed at all. Naruto asked the obvious question. If Tsunade was 7, where was the Tsunade from her original generation? Tsunade had no answer. They decided to find one. That afternoon, they went to the public memorial records and academy archives. Tsunade searched first for the woman she remembered being. There was no record of a Tsunade who had trained under Hiruzen. No legendary medic with her history. No famous team of Jiraiya, Orochimaru, and Tsunade. Instead, Hiruzen's old Genin team contained Jiraiya, Orochimaru, and a kunoichi named Kaede Mino. Kaede had specialized in barriers, field detection, and long-range scouting. She died during the Second Shinobi War, while holding a damaged perimeter barrier long enough for 2 Konoha units to retreat. The title, 3 Legendary Sannin, did not exist anywhere in the records. Jiraiya was famous as a traveler, intelligence gatherer, and summoner who spent long periods outside the village. Orochimaru was famous for research and battlefield innovation, but his name appeared far less often beside Jiraiya's than Tsunade remembered. After Kaede's death, the 2 surviving students of Hiruzen had drifted apart years earlier than they had in the first world. Kaede's life had left marks of its own. Konoha's barrier division was larger and more centralized than Naruto remembered. Several detection posts around the village walls used methods descended from her work. Hiruzen had funded the division heavily after her death, apparently unwilling to lose another team because warning systems had failed. The medical corps showed the largest difference. Konoha still had talented healers. It still trained field medics. But the standardized combat medic doctrine Tsunade remembered building after Nawaki's death had never taken the same shape. Emergency teams were smaller. Triage rules differed between units. Medical training for ordinary squads was inconsistent. Remote settlements depended too heavily on whoever happened to be assigned nearby. Tsunade closed the last medical report, but she did not leave the archive table. Naruto watched her search another name, Nawaki Senju. In the first world, her little brother had died at 12. In this world, he had never been her brother, because the girl sitting beside Naruto had been born generations later. Yet, Nawaki himself had still existed as another grandchild of Hashirama's line. The record surprised her. He had survived the mission that killed him in her memory. Without an older sister, handing him the first Hokage's necklace, and feeding his hunger to prove himself on the battlefield, his path had changed. He still became a shinobi. He still volunteered for dangerous work. Years later, during the Third Shinobi War, an explosive trap destroyed his left leg. Nawaki survived, retired from active service, and eventually took charge of a small logistics station in northern Fire Country. Tsunade read the page 3 times. Naruto stayed quiet. She searched for Dan Kato next. Dan had died too, but not on the same mission Tsunade remembered. His record placed his death several years later, during an evacuation near the western border. He had never met the woman who once loved him. The fact hurt in a way Tsunade could not explain to anyone in the archive room. Then she searched for Shizune. Shizune was alive. She worked at Konoha Hospital as a medical shinobi under a different mentor, and had never spent years traveling with Tsunade. According to the personnel directory, she was currently assigned to surgery and poison response. Tsunade lowered the file slowly. 3 people from her first life had produced 3 different answers. One had lived longer, because she had never existed beside him. One had died anyway, only later and somewhere else. One had built a life that had never included her at all. That was the moment the new world became real in a way the missing Sanin title had not managed. Their old memories were not a prophecy. They were records from a country that no longer existed. Tsunade also understood something about their reincarnation that made the situation easier to live with. She had not appeared inside an empty body that morning. She remembered 7 full years as Haru and Mika's daughter. Naruto carried the same strange double layer. His second childhood before that morning was still in his head, tangled beneath the life of the 7th Hokage. Their older memories had awakened at 7. They had not erased the children who had been living here. Naruto leaned back in the wooden chair and looked toward the archive window, where Konoha's rooftops glowed orange in the late afternoon sun. He and Tsunade knew people. They knew techniques. They understood how certain choices had once ended. That knowledge could warn them, but it could no longer tell them what waited around the next corner. The next problem was harder than history books. Naruto still lived alone. Tsunade saw the apartment for herself 3 days later. She had gone there because Naruto missed afternoon training and had not appeared at the ramen stand where they had agreed to meet. He opened the door with damp hair, a blanket around his shoulders, and the stubborn expression of someone who had already decided he was fine. He was running a fever. Tsunade walked past him before he could argue. The kitchen told her more than Naruto did. 2 cups, 1 cracked plate, instant noodles stacked above the sink, milk that should have been thrown away days earlier, a cupboard filled with whatever a child could buy cheaply and prepare without help. She checked his temperature, forced water into his hands, and opened a window enough to clear the stale air. Naruto insisted he had survived worse. Tsunade knew that was true. It made her angrier. By evening, Mika had arrived with medicine and food after Tsunade told her that a classmate was sick and had no one at home. Naruto became visibly uncomfortable the moment an adult stepped into the apartment. He kept saying he could handle himself. He thanked Mika too many times. He tried to stand while dizzy, because he thought guests should not have to clean up after him. Mika noticed all of it. She said nothing about the 9 tails. She simply put a bowl of soup in front of Naruto and told him to eat before it got cold. 2 days later, Tsunade brought him home for dinner. Haru knew who Naruto was. Nearly every adult in Konoha did. His first reaction was guarded, and Naruto recognized it immediately. He had seen that small tightening around the eyes thousands of times as a child. Tsunade saw him notice. She sat beside Naruto instead of across from him. Dinner began awkwardly. Haru asked about the academy. Naruto answered too loudly. Mika asked whether he liked grilled mackerel. Naruto said yes before tasting it, then ate 3 portions and tried to pretend that was normal. By the end of the meal, Haru was arguing with Naruto about whether the 4th Hokage could have defeated 3 elite Jonin at once. Naruto nearly said that he knew exactly what Minato could do, caught himself, and turned the sentence into a ridiculous boast about how he would surpass the 4th anyway. Haru laughed. Naruto went quiet for half a second, then reached for more rice. The dinner ended like an ordinary family meal. Haru still watched Naruto cautiously when the boy left. And Mika treated him as Tsunade's classmate rather than a new son. Tsunade expected trust to take time, so she kept bringing Naruto back. Once a week became twice. Twice became whenever training ran late. A spare cup appeared near the sink. Mika started buying extra eggs because Naruto always took 2. Haru complained when Naruto left sandals crooked by the door, which meant Naruto had started leaving sandals by the door often enough for it to become irritating. Tsunade watched the change happen through small details. Naruto stopped asking whether he was allowed to take more food. He still thanked Mika, but only once. He began arguing with Haru without watching the man's face afterward to check whether he had gone too far. The promise Tsunade had made in another lifetime was being fulfilled in ways too ordinary for anyone else to notice. Their training changed too. Naruto learned quickly that memory could be a dangerous teacher. He knew how advanced techniques should feel in a body that no longer existed. When he tried to force chakra through pathways too small to handle the output, he remembered. He gave himself headaches and once collapsed after attempting too many clones. Tsunade was less reckless, though not by much. Her control returned faster than Naruto's because she understood the smallest adjustments in chakra flow. But her muscles could not support the strength technique she had once used casually. The first time she tried to concentrate enough chakra into a punch to crack a boulder, she injured 2 fingers and spent the next week furious at herself. They changed approach. Naruto built fundamentals he had neglected in his first childhood. Footwork, balance, chakra control, throwing accuracy, taijutsu without relying on absurd stamina. Tsunade rebuilt medical control from the ground up. She practiced on fish from the market, bruised fruit, cut plant stems, and eventually small injuries under Mika's supervision. Her mother believed she was raising a frighteningly gifted child. Tsunade let her believe it. Neither tried to become an adult shinobi overnight. They had time. That idea was still difficult for Naruto. The first truly dangerous problem arrived before Naruto had learned to enjoy having time. Sasuke Uchiha was sitting beneath a tree behind the academy when Naruto noticed him eating lunch alone. His hair was still too carefully arranged. His expression still carried that irritating confidence Naruto remembered from childhood. There was no hatred in his eyes. Naruto stopped walking. A memory rose with painful clarity. An empty district. A boy standing among bodies. Years of rage afterward. Tsunade found Naruto watching from across the yard. She knew where his thoughts had gone. But she also reminded him of the rule they had learned in the archive. They could not assume the Uchiha were walking toward the same disaster. For 2 weeks, they did nothing except observe. Naruto hated every day of it. The more they learned, the stranger the picture became. The Uchiha police still had a tense relationship with the Hokage's administration, but the source of that tension was not identical to the one Naruto remembered. After the Nine Tails attack, the police had been pushed away from several emergency and intelligence duties. At the same time, Konoha's expanded barrier division had taken over work that once passed through the police. The result was a long argument over authority, access to investigations, and control of security inside the village. Fugaku was still clan head. Itachi was still an Anbu prodigy. Shisui was still one of Konoha's most respected young shinobi. But several names from the classified coup records Naruto remembered were missing from clan leadership. 2 hardline officers had died during a border deployment years earlier. A different group now wanted the Uchiha police to withdraw from joint security. Work until the village restored powers the clan believed had been taken unfairly. That was dangerous, but it was not the old coup. The other side had changed too. Root was active near the district much earlier than Naruto expected. Danzo appeared to be collecting evidence for an emergency order that would let the Hokage seize Uchiha police armories and place the district under temporary military supervision. Naruto remembered no such order from his first world. Tsunade pointed out the obvious. If Danzo obtained proof of an armed Uchiha refusal, even proof he helped create, he could turn a political standoff into a security crisis. They needed something current. Memories would not be enough. One evening, Naruto and Tsunade followed 2 masked men at a distance through market alleys. They never tried to tail trained shinobi directly. Naruto sent a single transformation clone ahead as a stray dog, while he and Tsunade moved through side streets. The clone lost the men twice. Naruto dismissed it each time before discovery, and created another farther along their direction. The trail ended near an abandoned storage building beside an old drainage channel. Naruto remembered underground road access tunnels beneath that section of Konoha from records opened after Danzo's death in his first life. Kaede Mino's expanded barrier network had sealed many of the old routes in this world, but the buildings still stood outside the strongest detection grid. Naruto and Tsunade stayed on the roof across the channel. One masked man entered. The other remained outside long enough to pass a sealed packet to a civilian clerk from the village security office. Tsunade recognized the clerk. Mika had complained about him once because his department had delayed hospital supply permits for weeks. That gave them a name they could actually investigate. They spent 3 days watching the clerk rather than Root. He was easier to follow and careless enough to visit a gambling house after work. Naruto used a clone transformed into an older academy student to bump into him outside and knock a stack of papers into the mud. While the man shouted, another clone copied the seal marks from the packet visible inside his satchel. The mark belonged to an emergency property office under the village council. Tsunade searched public regulations and found the form Root was preparing. It was a seizure authorization normally used when a military unit was suspected of hoarding prohibited weapons during an active crisis. There was no active crisis. Now they had something Hiruzen could verify. Naruto already had a loose connection to the third Hokage. Hiruzen occasionally checked on him, never enough to erase the loneliness of his childhood, but often enough that Naruto could request a meeting without causing alarm. He arrived with Tsunade, a copied seal pattern, the name of the clerk, the address of the storage building, and the times they had seen masked operatives enter it. Hiruzen's expression hardened as the report continued. Naruto kept their explanation simple. They had noticed masked men near the Uchiha district, followed the easier civilian contact, and found signs that someone was preparing an emergency seizure order. Tsunade explained the regulation and why the document made no sense without a declared security threat. Hiruzen wanted to know how 2 academy students had shown more restraint than some chunin. Naruto almost answered that dying of old age helped. Tsunade kicked his ankle under the chair before he could say anything stupid. Hiruzen sent Anbu to watch the storage building, audit the clerk's communications, and inspect the legal chain behind the seizure paperwork. He also changed the reporting routes of Shisui and Itachi, so that neither could be drawn into an unsupervised meeting with Root. 3 days later, his investigators confirmed an unauthorized Root operation. What they found was worse than a forged form. Danzo's agents had quietly moved weapons from a decommissioned border depot into a warehouse registered to an Uchiha-owned transport company. The plan was simple. Once the weapons were discovered, Danzo could argue that the clan was preparing an armed refusal of Hokage authority. The emergency order would then let Root secure the police armories before negotiations even began. Hiruzen moved to seize the planted weapons first. Danzo realized he was about to lose control of the operation. That night, Root teams tried to remove the evidence, while a separate squad entered the Uchiha district to detain 3 police officers accused of conspiracy. The officers resisted, because no valid arrest order had reached clan leadership. A fight broke out beside a records hall. Someone threw an explosive tag. Another shinobi answered with fire. The first blast shook the academy windows. Iruka ordered every student to remain inside. Naruto looked at Sasuke. Sasuke was already standing. His family was in the district. Iruka blocked the main door before Sasuke could move. Naruto understood the order. 7-year-old students had no place inside an armed police standoff. He also knew Sasuke would find another exit within seconds. A second blast sounded. Naruto caught Tsunade's eye. She looked furious because she knew exactly what he was thinking. Then smoke rose beyond the roofs. Naruto created 4 clones and sent them toward different windows. Iruka caught 2. Another instructor stopped a third. The distraction gave Naruto, Tsunade, and Sasuke enough time to slip through the rear equipment room. Tsunade forced both boys to agree to one rule before they left the academy grounds. They were not going toward the armed confrontation. They would help civilians move away from it. Smoke covered the lower streets of the district when they arrived. The conflict was smaller than the massacre Naruto remembered, but that did not make it safe. Uchiha police were pushing families toward the western road, while Hiruzen's Anbu tried to separate Root operatives from local officers. Naruto used clones to carry directions when smoke blocked line of sight. Sasuke knew every courtyard and service lane. Tsunade treated burns and smoke inhalation with a level of medical control that made an adult police medic stare at her twice. Then, a burning storage loft collapsed across one of the alleys. A woman screamed that 2 children were still inside the house beyond it. Naruto sent a clone through a side window. The clone vanished under falling debris, but its memory returned with the room layout. One child had made it to the rear door. The other was trapped beneath a beam near the wall. Naruto could not lift the beam with his current body. Tsunade could not smash it safely without bringing the roof down. Sasuke knew an old service hatch behind the house. They circled through a narrow yard. Sasuke used wire and 2 shuriken to pull a burning curtain away from the hatch, then crawled inside with Naruto's clone. The real Naruto and Tsunade entered after them. The trapped boy's ankle was pinned beneath a broken floorboard. Smoke was getting thicker. Naruto put 2 clones under the beam to take part of its weight. Tsunade slid in beside the child and checked the leg. Sasuke used a kunai to cut through the split board around the ankle instead of trying to move the whole floor. The ceiling groaned. One clone burst. Naruto replaced it from the doorway, his arms shaking with the chakra cost. Tsunade pulled the child free. A crash sounded in the front room. Sasuke turned toward it and saw Mikoto through the smoke. She had entered with 2 police shinobi searching the buildings, and a falling support had struck one of them. Mikoto was trying to drag the man clear, when another section of roof started to come down above her. Sasuke moved before anyone could stop him. The world sharpened around him. For one terrible second, he saw his mother beneath the falling timber and believed he was about to lose her. His eyes burned. A single tomoe formed in each Sharingan. Sasuke caught the movement of the roof a fraction earlier than he should have. He threw his wire around a support hook, planted both feet against the wall, and pulled. The timber shifted just enough for Mikoto to roll aside with the injured officer. Naruto's clones took the trapped child through the rear hatch. Tsunade shoved Sasuke after them. They escaped seconds before the front half of the house collapsed. Outside, Mikoto grabbed Sasuke so hard his feet left the ground. Relief became anger almost immediately when she realized he had left the academy during an emergency. Sasuke did not hear half of it. He was staring at his reflection in a metal police plate, where red eyes looked back at him. Naruto remembered another world where those eyes had awakened through horror far worse than this. This time, Sasuke's family was standing around him alive. The wider conflict ended before midnight. Hiruzen's investigators secured the planted weapons. Shisui and Itachi brought Fugaku the evidence before Root could frame the discovery as an Uchiha plot. Danzo denied ordering an arms confrontation, but Root records tied his people to the false seizure process and the weapons transfer. The Uchiha side had problems of its own. Several police officers had ignored Hokage orders during the confusion, and one hardline faction had tried to use the standoff to force Fugaku into withdrawing the clan from joint security duty. Hiruzen refused to pretend that only Danzo had created the crisis. The solution took months. Root lost its independent authority to conduct operations inside clan districts. Several facilities were placed under Anbu control. The Uchiha police gave up exclusive control over some investigations in exchange for seats on a new joint security board. Shisui became one of the first permanent liaisons between that board and the Hokage's office. Fugaku accepted outside review of police armories. Hiruzen formally barred emergency seizure orders from being issued against a clan without his signature and a second civilian authorization. Nobody got everything they wanted. That was why the agreement survived. The biggest difference was easy to see. There was no massacre. Fugaku and Mikoto remained alive. Itachi remained part of his family. Shisui was never isolated into a private choice between Danzo and the clan. Sasuke grew up with a one Tomoe Sharingan awakened while saving his mother, not with eyes carved open by an entire district of corpses. Naruto and Tsunade still paid for leaving the academy. Iruka made all 3 children clean training rooms for 2 weeks. Hiruzen questioned Naruto and Tsunade separately. Their stories matched because the parts they told him were true. He did not believe those parts were the whole truth. After that night, he quietly assigned an Anbu observer to check on them at irregular intervals. Sometimes, Hiruzen tested them with harmless misinformation to see whether they reacted as if they knew more. Sometimes, he asked Iruka for reports that had nothing to do with grades. Naruto noticed by the second month. Tsunade noticed in 4 days. Neither confronted him. Hiruzen was not their enemy. He was the Hokage of a military village, and 2 7-year-olds had just exposed a covert operation that several adult departments had missed. Naruto would have investigated them too. Naruto saw the result of the changed Uchiha future every day at the academy. Sasuke was still annoying. He still trained obsessively. He still looked pleased whenever he scored higher than Naruto on a test. Now, he also had a one-tomo Sharingan that appeared whenever he became frightened or pushed too hard. Itachi refused to let him treat the eyes like a trophy. Shisui taught him basic control. Only after Mikoto made both older boys promise that Sasuke would not spend every evening trying to force the Sharingan awake. For almost a week, Naruto lost arguments to Sasuke on purpose, because seeing him complain about ordinary things felt better than any victory. Sasuke finally shoved him during lunch and demanded that he stop acting like an idiot. Tsunade laughed so hard, milk came out of her nose. Naruto considered that punishment enough. The political consequences lasted much longer than the academy gossip. The new Joint Security Board changed how Konoha used its clans. Uchiha police officers began working mixed patrols with Nara planners, Yamanaka interrogators, Aburame trackers, and ordinary shinobi who had never served under the police command. Shikaku Nara was pulled into several of the early negotiations, because Hiruzen trusted his ability to make angry people listen to arithmetic. That affected Shikamaru too. He still complained that everything was troublesome, but by 9, he had already learned enough from overheard conversations at home to recognize when adults were pretending a political argument was only about procedure. Naruto sometimes caught him watching the Uchiha students with an expression far too thoughtful for a boy lying half asleep on a desk. The survival of the Uchiha also changed Konoha's strength outside the walls. Itachi was not pushed toward the same breaking point. Shisui remained available for missions. Experienced police shinobi who would have died in Naruto's first world were reassigned to border work in rotating units. That freed other teams for escorts and regional patrols. Merchants noticed. So did neighboring countries. Mission requests to Konoha increased along the eastern trade roads, because clients believed the village had more elite shinobi available than it had 5 years earlier in Naruto's memory. A minor dispute with a river country transport guild ended through negotiation, because the guild did not want an argument with a village whose Uchiha force had remained intact. None of that was dramatic enough to reach academy lessons, but Naruto heard the difference in Haru's complaints about paperwork and in the stories shinobi told at food stalls. Naruto began to understand what the butterfly effect looked like in ordinary life. A clan survived, so a patrol existed that had not existed before. That patrol caught smugglers, so a merchant changed routes. A changed route made one town richer and another quieter. Somewhere else, a mercenary company lost work and went looking for a different employer. Naruto stopped expecting to understand all of it. Life settled into a rhythm. He turned 8, then 9. He got taller, his chakra reserves expanded, he learned to create more clones without collapsing, and used them to accelerate basic training rather than chase techniques his body was not ready to support. Tsunade's control became frighteningly precise. Mika began taking her to supervise sections of the hospital, first to observe, then to assist with simple cases. Tsunade introduced ideas in pieces that adults could test. A better way to label emergency supplies, a standardized order for assessing battlefield injuries, a training drill that forced medics to make triage decisions under pressure, a simplified chakra control exercise for junior medical students. Mika carried several suggestions to her supervisors. Other medics altered them, argued over them, and sometimes improved them. Within 2 years, methods that began at the family table were being used in 2 hospital wards and 1 regional clinic. That was where Tsunade saw Shizune. She knew the voice before she saw the face. Shizune was in her 20s in this world, dressed in hospital green, giving instructions to 2 younger medics beside a poison treatment room. Her hair was shorter than Tsunade remembered. Her posture was different. She carried no pig under one arm and no stack of gambling debts in the other hand. She looked healthy, busy, completely unaware that the 9-year-old girl frozen at the end of the corridor had once trusted her with almost everything. Shizune noticed the staring and asked Mika whether the child needed something. Tsunade recovered fast enough to claim she was interested in the poison response chart on the wall. Shizune smiled, explained 2 of the symbols, and continued down the corridor. Tsunade remained beside the chart long after she had stopped reading it. Naruto found her on the hospital roof that evening. He did not ask whether she was all right. He knew she hated questions with obvious answers. Instead, he handed her a paper cup of tea and told her Haru had sent him, because apparently a 9-year-old medical genius could remember 14 antidote ratios, but not dinner. Tsunade told him Haru had definitely not phrased it that way. Naruto admitted that part was his contribution. They sat with their feet against the gutter while hospital lights came on below them. Tsunade eventually told him she had seen Shizune. She also admitted that she had found Nawaki's current address months earlier and had not written to him. The man living in Northern Fire Country had his own family, his own career, and no memory of being her brother. Tsunade could not decide whether meeting him would be kindness or selfishness. Naruto did not decide for her. He only reminded her that the promise about a second life had never been one way. If she intended to keep him from spending every year fixing old pain, he was allowed to stop her from doing the same thing. The next day, he dragged her to a street festival with Sasuke, Sakura, Shikamaru, Ino, Choji, Kiba, Shino, and Hinata. Tsunade complained for the first 10 minutes. Then Kiba challenged Naruto to a target game. Akamaru stole one of Choji's skewers. Ino accused Sakura of cheating at ring toss. And Tsunade became so determined to beat a gambling stall that Naruto had to physically pull her away before she spent all the money Mika had given them for dinner. Some parts of Tsunade apparently survived every universe intact. The Academy generation changed around them too. Sakura still had excellent academic scores and unusually careful chakra control. In Naruto's first childhood, he had noticed almost none of that, because he had been too busy trying to impress her. This time, Tsunade noticed within months. She never told Sakura that another version of her had become one of the world's greatest medical shinobi. She simply challenged her during control exercises, then casually mentioned a hospital youth program that accepted academy students twice a month. Sakura joined because she hated being told something might be too difficult. By 11, she had basic first aid experience that the Sakura from Naruto's first academy years had never possessed. Hinata was familiar and different in quieter ways. She remained shy, especially around Naruto, but the village's new obsession with clan oversight after the Uchiha crisis had reached the Hyuga as well. Hiruzen had not abolished the branch family seal or rewritten centuries of internal law. He had, however, required major clans to document disciplinary procedures that could affect village service. The Hyuga hated the intrusion. The debate created space for people inside the clan who had wanted reform for years. Neji still carried anger. His father was still dead. Naruto discovered that some tragedies had survived the changed world, even when the exact politics around them had shifted. But Neji was no longer growing inside a system that everyone outside the compound pretended not to see. By the time Naruto was 10, Shikaku had chaired 2 closed meetings between the Hyuga main family and village leadership. Nothing was solved. The fact that a problem was being named at all changed how Neji spoke about it. Naruto met him during an academy field day where Guy's newly formed Genin team helped supervise the older students. And he almost made the mistake of giving the speech he remembered from another life. He stopped himself. This Neji had not fought him in a Chunin exam. This Neji had never heard that speech. He deserved to become himself, without Naruto forcing an old version onto him. So Naruto sparred with him, lost cleanly on points, complained about the gentle fist for 20 minutes, and invited him to ramen afterward. Lee accepted on Neji's behalf, before anyone asked him. Guy appeared from nowhere to praise youthful friendship, loudly enough that half the training field turned to look. Tsunade watched Guy hug Lee and told Naruto that some things were apparently stronger than time itself. Naruto agreed. Then Guy challenged Kakashi, who was not even present, and ran away to find him. Kurama's relationship with Naruto changed more slowly than any village policy. Naruto visited the seal every few weeks. At first, the fox greeted him with threats. Naruto talked anyway. Sometimes he described the village. Sometimes he complained about homework. Once he explained that Tsunade had broken 3 training posts because she forgot her body was 9. Kurama ordered him to leave. Naruto left. On the next visit, Kurama asked whether the foolish girl had broken anything else. Naruto smiled for the rest of the day and refused to explain why when Tsunade noticed. By 10, Naruto had learned something that would have sounded ridiculous to the man he once became. He had time. In his first childhood, every weakness had felt urgent. Someone was always ahead of him. Another threat was always approaching. And someone he cared about always seemed to need saving. Now many of those future problems might not exist in the same form at all. That uncertainty frightened him more than he admitted, but it also took away the old schedule in his head. There was no reason to turn every afternoon into preparation for a battle whose date might never come. He trained hard and went home when his hands started shaking. He spent evenings at Ichiraku without making everything a contest. He attended festivals with Tsunade and her parents. He argued with Sasuke over shuriken scores, then ate dinner in the Uchiha district. Because Mikoto decided any boy capable of distracting Sasuke from training deserved food. Naruto also learned to return Tsunade's care instead of only receiving it, when she spent 3 nights studying hospital records until Mika threatened to lock the files away. By challenging her to a race across the training grounds and refusing to tell her the prize until she followed. The prize turned out to be ramen. Tsunade called it idiotic. She ate 2 bowls when a letter from the Northern Logistics Station arrived after Tsunade finally wrote to Nawaki under the harmless excuse of asking about old Senju supply records. She carried it unopened for an entire day. Naruto sat beside her while she read. Nawaki's reply was friendly, practical, and completely ordinary. He remembered nothing about her because there was nothing in this life to remember. He answered her questions, complained about bad roads, and mentioned 2 grandchildren who kept stealing tools from his office. Tsunade laughed once at that line, then pressed the page flat with both hands. She did not travel north, not yet, but she kept the letter. The changed world kept moving outside their personal lives. Konoha's stronger security force made some roads safer and pushed criminal groups towards softer regions. The medical corps improved in the center, but remained inconsistent at the edges of fire country. The hospital began sending Tsunade's revised triage sheets to 2 regional posts, where local medics changed them again for their own conditions. An Aburame patrol identified a new crop disease months earlier than Naruto remembered any such problem. A Yamanaka interrogation unit uncovered a smuggling route, because one of the Uchiha officers assigned to the joint board recognized a forged police seal. Haru complained that every successful reform created 3 new forms for his office. Naruto heard all of it and understood less of the future each year. That was probably healthy. By 11, Tsunade's name was familiar to senior medics who had never expected to teach an academy student. She still attended ordinary classes. She still practiced transformation, genjutsu release, weapons, field survival, and written tactics with everyone else. 2 afternoons each week, she trained under Mika and an experienced hospital instructor. Her strength technique returned slowly. She could crack a thick training post with a prepared strike, but the muscles in her forearm complained afterward. Trying to imitate her adult body would still injure her. Naruto found that extremely funny, until Tsunade used him to demonstrate the correct way to treat a dislocated shoulder. Sasuke's Sharingan also developed gradually. The eyes did not jump from terror to mastery. Itachi made him train ordinary perception first. By 12, Sasuke could reliably activate a single tomoe in each eye during combat. And sometimes, hold a second tomoe in one eye, under heavy pressure. But prolonged use exhausted him. That limitation irritated him, almost as much as Naruto did. At 12, graduation finally arrived. Naruto could have passed the basic requirements much earlier. So could Tsunade. Neither asked to graduate ahead of schedule. That decision confused Hiruzen more than their talent did. Naruto explained that he had spent enough of his life trying to reach the next thing as fast as possible. Hiruzen looked at him for a long time after that answer. He had been watching Naruto and Tsunade closely for years. The incident with Root had never left his mind. Their knowledge was too strange. Their judgment was sometimes far beyond their age, then ruined 5 minutes later by an argument over who had stolen whose lunch. He still did not know the truth. Naruto and Tsunade preferred it that way. Graduation day came under a bright sky. Naruto tied his forehead protector around his head and stared at his reflection longer than he expected. The first time he had earned one, he had been desperate for proof that someone accepted him. Now the metal plate felt different. Tsunade found him outside the academy and immediately complained that he had tied it crooked. He called her Granny. Some traditions deserved protection. The team assignments surprised almost everyone, except Hiruzen. Naruto Uzumaki, Tsunade, Sasuke Uchiha, Team 7 under Kakashi Hatake. Hiruzen had built the team deliberately. Kakashi was one of the few jonin he trusted with Naruto's status as the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. The political weight surrounding an Uchiha heir, and the mystery that still followed Naruto and Tsunade after the Root investigation. Kakashi had served under Minato, understood the Sharingan, and had enough experience in Anbu to recognize the difference between talented children and children hiding something dangerous. Assigning all three to him gave them an exceptional teacher. It also gave Hiruzen a reliable set of eyes close to them without placing another Anbu shadow on every training field. Sakura joined a different team with 2 students whose abilities suited hers, and continued the hospital youth program on free afternoons. She was disappointed when Sasuke was assigned elsewhere, but she had enough of her own direction now that the disappointment did not define the day. Naruto remembered another version of himself who would have complained for hours. This time, he only wished her luck. Kakashi arrived late. Naruto had forgotten how irritating that was when he was not the one doing it. The Jonin looked almost exactly as Naruto remembered from childhood. Silver hair, mask, forehead protector tilted over one eye, small orange book in hand. Kakashi looked at Naruto for half a second longer than he looked at the others. Then his gaze moved to Tsunade, then to Sasuke. Hiruzen had given him a team containing the son of his old teacher, a young Uchiha from the village's most politically sensitive clan, and a Senju descendant who had somehow become one of the most promising medical students Konoha had seen in years. Kakashi probably considered retirement before lunch. His first test was not the bell exercise Naruto remembered. That alone told Naruto how far the world had moved. Kakashi brought them to a forest training ground near the northern wall at sunset. Somewhere inside the forest, he had hidden a sealed scroll. They had until sunrise to retrieve it and carry it to a marked stone on the opposite side of the field. The only rule was that all three had to arrive with the scroll. Sasuke immediately began searching for the most likely hiding places. Naruto recognized the real test almost as quickly as Tsunade did. Kakashi was not measuring whether they could find a scroll. He was measuring how 3 unusually capable children handled a problem, when each believed he or she was good enough to solve it alone. Tsunade suggested mapping the field first. Sasuke wanted to move before Kakashi changed the terrain. Naruto almost agreed with Sasuke out of habit, then noticed a thin wire between 2 roots 20 feet ahead. He stopped. Kakashi had already started. The first hour was humiliating. Every obvious route contained traps. Some were simple academy snares. Others were layered so that avoiding one triggered another. Naruto sent clones ahead and lost 6 in 10 minutes. Sasuke used his Sharingan only after a smoke trap filled an entire ravine. Tsunade discovered that 3 of the traps were not designed to injure them at all. They redirected movement toward isolated sections of the forest. Kakashi was trying to separate them. Once they understood that, they changed tactics. Naruto used clones to trigger false trails. Sasuke watched from above and tracked which traps Kakashi reset remotely. Tsunade marked safe ground with tiny scratches on tree roots and refused to let either boy chase suspicious movement without checking the route first. Near midnight, they found the scroll hanging inside a wooden cage over a narrow stream. Sasuke moved first and stopped when Tsunade grabbed his sleeve. The cage was bait. The real scroll was inside the water beneath it, sealed in a weighted metal tube. Naruto found it with a clone. The moment he touched the tube, Kakashi appeared and took it away. Sasuke attacked immediately. Kakashi avoided him with embarrassing ease. Naruto joined from the side. Tsunade stayed back for 3 seconds, watching Kakashi's feet instead of his hands. She saw the pattern first. Kakashi kept moving toward the stream. He wanted them to follow. Tsunade shouted a warning. Naruto stopped. Sasuke did not. The ground beneath Sasuke collapsed into a mud pit. Kakashi looked almost pleased. Sasuke looked ready to murder everyone involved. Naruto could have laughed. Instead, he threw a rope. That choice ended the test. Kakashi handed them the scroll after Sasuke climbed out. He explained that raw talent was the least interesting thing about their team. Every member was capable of becoming dangerous alone. That made it more important that they learn when not to be alone. Naruto glanced at Tsunade. She noticed and kicked his ankle before he could make a joke. Team 7 began with ordinary work. Lost animals, fence repairs, escorting merchants between nearby towns, delivering sealed documents, guarding construction crews. Naruto complained loudly enough to satisfy everyone's expectations, but he did the work properly. Kakashi noticed that too. He noticed Naruto's unusually efficient clone use. He noticed Tsunade's medical knowledge. He noticed that Sasuke's competitiveness pushed him forward without poisoning every interaction. Most of all, he noticed that Naruto and Tsunade sometimes reacted to danger before he gave an order, as if they had already spent years fighting beside each other. 3 months after graduation, Team 7 received its first mission beyond the usual get-in work. Several farming settlements near the eastern edge of the Land of Fire had reported a spreading illness. Konoha was sending medicine, clean water equipment, and 2 medical shinobi. Team 7 would escort the supply wagons through an area considered low risk. The mission should have taken 6 days. On the 4th day, they reached the village of Koseki and found 30 people lying inside a converted grain store. The illness did not behave like an illness. Victims had fever, muscle tremors, and dark branching marks around major chakra points. Ordinary civilians became weak over several days. Shinobi deteriorated much faster whenever they molded chakra. Tsunade crouched beside a middle-aged farmer and pressed 2 fingers lightly against the skin below his collarbone. The man's chakra pathway spasmed beneath her touch. She looked at Kakashi. This was poison, not one she remembered. That mattered. Naruto saw the moment she realized it. Their first major crisis had at least contained familiar names, such as Danzo, Shisui, and the Uchiha. Even though the conflict itself had changed, the memories gave them reference points. The toxin in Koseki offered none. She went to work anyway. The river did not. A thin residue collected inside the chakra-sensitive paper used by one of the Konoha medics. The toxin bonded poorly to ordinary tissue, but reacted aggressively to active chakra, which explained why Shinobi became sick faster. Tsunade requested samples from upstream. Kakashi sent Sasuke and a shadow clone of Naruto with him, while the real Naruto helped distribute sealed water from the wagons. 2 hours later, the clone vanished. Naruto received its memory at once. Upstream, hidden beneath reeds, Sasuke had found a clay container with a slow-release seal carved inside the lid. Someone had poisoned the river deliberately. Kakashi changed the mission immediately. One of the medical shinobi sent a hawk back to Konoha. The second began moving the sickest patients away from the river. Team 7 was ordered to investigate only far enough to identify the source and avoid direct engagement with a larger force. The enemy made that impossible by attacking first. A crossbow bolt struck the side of a supply cart after sunset. Then, 3 smoke bombs rolled into the road. Kakashi was already moving. He knocked the second bolt aside and ordered the genin behind the wagons. Naruto created 8 clones, 4 taking civilian workers into cover, while the others spread wide through the trees. Sasuke climbed the left slope. Tsunade stayed beside the 2 medics, because the attackers might be trying to destroy treatment supplies, rather than kill Shinobi. A masked man came through the smoke, directly toward the medicine crates. Tsunade threw a kunai low. He jumped it. That was what she wanted. Naruto's clone hit him in the side, while he was airborne. The man twisted, destroyed the clone with an elbow, and landed facing Tsunade. He was faster than any academy opponent. Tsunade did not try to overpower him. She stepped inside his first strike, caught his wrist with both hands, and drove a precise pulse of chakra into the muscles near his elbow. His hand opened from sudden numbness. The knife dropped. He kicked her in the ribs before she could retreat. Tsunade hit the road and rolled twice. Naruto's real body came out of the smoke from behind a wagon. He did not attack the man directly. He kicked the dropped knife under the cart and used 2 clones to force the attacker towards Sasuke's side of the road. A fireball tore through the branches above him. The attacker ducked. Kakashi appeared behind him and ended the fight with 1 strike to the neck. The entire exchange lasted seconds. It was enough to teach Team 7 the difference between training and professionals trying to kill them. The captured man carried 3 glass vials of concentrated toxin and a payment token stamped with the symbol of a private medical supplier from River Country. Kakashi questioned him after securing the area. The answers revealed a business that had been operating for years. A former field medic named Daigo Ren controlled a network that sold battlefield stimulants, poisons, illegal treatments, and antidotes. In poor border regions, he had discovered a more reliable market than individual villagers. His men contaminated water sources with low doses of specialized toxins. Local healers failed. Panic spread. Then companies connected to Daigo offered emergency medicine to estate managers, merchant cooperatives, regional offices, and minor nobles who controlled relief money. The farmers rarely paid the full price themselves. Landowners and local administrations paid because losing an entire harvest district cost more than buying a cure. Daigo created the emergency, sold the treatment, and collected public or commercial money on both sides of the crisis. Koseki was part of a larger test. The toxin in the river was designed to spread downstream into 3 settlements over the next week. Notes taken from the captured attacker listed 2 buyers outside the Land of Fire as well. Daigo was testing whether the same method could be sold to criminal partners along other trade rivers. Tsunade read the captured man's notes twice. In her first life, a scheme that large would have been harder to hide inside the Land of Fire. Combat medics trained under standardized protocols would have identified the chakra reaction faster. Regional emergency stores would have carried broader antidote kits. And field reports would have reached Konoha in a common format, instead of 3 incompatible ones. This criminal network had grown inside one of the gaps left by the world where adult Tsunade had never existed. At the same time, Konoha's stronger patrol presence after the Uchiha reforms had pushed smugglers away from central roads and toward exactly these thinly protected medical regions. 2 separate butterflies had helped create the same problem. Tsunade understood the distinction. She had no guilt for a life that had never happened here. The sight of patients suffering inside a weakness she once knew how to prevent still made the problem personal. Daigo's main camp was several miles upstream near an old flood control reservoir built between 2 rocky hills. If he released a concentrated batch there, the current would carry it past Koseki before Konoha reinforcements arrived. Kakashi wanted to wait for backup. Then Naruto found a synchronization seal etched into the base of 1 captured vial. Daigo's field teams used the marks to coordinate toxin releases with the arrival of their sales agents. Tsunade recognized the pattern only because the residue reacted to a pulse of medical chakra. The next release was scheduled for before dawn. They had less than 4 hours. Kakashi made the decision. The 2 Konoha medics would stay with the village and continued treatment. Team 7 would move upstream, stop the release mechanism, and withdraw once reinforcements arrived. No pursuit beyond the reservoir. Rain began halfway there. The reservoir sat behind a stone retaining wall nearly 40 feet high. An old maintenance building stood on the western bank. Lantern light moved between trees. Naruto counted 4 guards around the lower buildings through clone scouting, and Sasuke found 2 more on the upper road. Kakashi identified Daigo near the maintenance building. The man was lean, gray-haired, and wore medical pouches across his chest instead of standard weapon holsters. Chakra wires ran from his fingers to small metal needles planted around the ground. Kakashi understood the trap before anyone stepped into it. Daigo had prepared the area to punish chakra use. The same toxin in the river coated the needles. A shinobi moving quickly through the field could cut himself without noticing, then accelerate the poison by molding more chakra. Kakashi divided the team. Sasuke would take the upper spillway and stop anyone from opening the secondary channel. Naruto and Tsunade would reach the reservoir controls and disable the poison release. Kakashi would engage Daigo and keep the main group away from them. Nobody argued. That alone showed how far they had come. Naruto sent 3 clones ahead with minimal chakra. One struck a wire and disappeared. Its memory showed the position of 4 needles. The second triggered a hidden tag. The third reached the control platform and saw 2 metal drums connected to the water gate through narrow pipes. Tsunade mapped the safe route from the returned memories. They moved. Kakashi crossed the clearing first. Daigo flicked both hands. 6 needles rose on chakra wire from the wet ground and snapped toward Kakashi from different angles. Kakashi substituted with a cut log, but the log burst into purple smoke on contact. The needles carried aerosolized toxin as well. Kakashi stopped using large bursts of chakra. Daigo smiled. That was his real weapon. He did not need to overpower elite shinobi. He made their own chakra dangerous. Kakashi switched to pure movement and steel. He closed the distance with 2 kunai. Daigo retreated between prepared wires, forcing Kakashi to watch every footstep. 2 mercenaries attacked from the sides. Kakashi disabled the first with a kick and used the man's body to block a poisoned senbon from Daigo. The second lasted 3 exchanges before Kakashi struck his wrist, took the sword, and sent the flat of the blade into his temple. Daigo used those seconds to cut a small line across Kakashi's forearm with a wire. The wound barely bled. Kakashi felt numbness spread toward his elbow. Daigo expected him to increase chakra flow and make it worse. Kakashi did the opposite. He lowered his output and fought like a man with one arm becoming steadily less reliable. That made the battles slower and more dangerous, exactly what Daigo wanted. Across the reservoir, Naruto and Tsunade reached the first control shed. 2 guards were waiting. They were Chunin-level mercenaries, strong enough that neither 12-year-old should have fought one alone. Naruto did not try. 3 clones rushed the first guard from the front. The man destroyed 2 immediately and recognized the third as a feint. He turned toward the real Naruto coming from his blind side. That was the second feint. Tsunade struck the wooden platform beneath his leading foot. She did not use enough force to shatter the entire structure. She cracked one support plank. The guard's leg dropped for the floor to the knee. Naruto hit him with both palms, sending him backward while trapped. The man shouted and reached for a weapon. Tsunade touched 2 fingers to the side of his neck and released a focused chakra pulse. His arm went numb long enough for Naruto to bind him. The second guard learned from the first. He stayed off the damaged platform and threw poison senbon instead. Naruto used a clone as a shield and felt the sting through the returning memory when it vanished. Even clone contact gave him a brief phantom burn in the affected chakra point. Tsunade identified the poison as a faster version of the river compound. One real hit could cripple their chakra use within minutes. They stopped attacking directly. Naruto filled the shed with clones but kept them moving behind walls and support beams. The guard could not tell which footsteps belonged to the real body. Tsunade crawled beneath the platform, reached the pipe assembly, and loosened a pressure valve by hand instead of using chakra. Steam burst from the side of the mechanism. The guard turned toward the sound. Naruto's real body dropped from the roof and kicked the back of his knee. The guard spun and nearly caught him with a senbon. Naruto bent farther than his younger body liked, felt the needle pass his cheek, and drove a shoulder into the man's chest. Tsunade came up through the broken plank and hit the guard once, in the stomach, with a controlled chakra-enhanced punch. The impact lifted him off his feet and put him through the shed door. Tsunade grabbed her wrist afterward. The strike had worked. It had also strained the muscles in her forearm. She could not repeat it many times. They reached the drums. The problem was worse than expected. The poison was not released by a simple valve. Daigo had built a pressure system tied directly to the reservoir gate. If they cut the pipes incorrectly, the drums would rupture and dump everything into the water at once. Tsunade studied the mechanism, while Naruto guarded the door. She could stop it, but she needed time. Then the upper spillway exploded. Sasuke had found his own fight. 2 mercenaries had tried to open the secondary channel manually. Sasuke used the narrow walkway to keep them from surrounding him. He activated the single Tomo Sharingan he could hold reliably. The eyes helped him read shoulders, wrists, and the first direction of each attack. But they could not make his 12-year-old body faster than it was. One enemy spread water across the stone to ruin his footing, while the other attacked from below with a chain. Sasuke gave ground until they believed he was trapped near the edge, then fired a fireball into the wet stone in front of them, instead of at their bodies. Steam swallowed the walkway. He jumped onto the railing, ran 3 steps along it, and kicked the chain wielder into the second man. Before they could separate, he pinned the loose chain around the railing, with wire and a shuriken, buying enough time to seal the secondary lever. He fixed an explosive tag beside the handle, so that any attempt to force it would destroy the mechanism, instead of opening the channel. The 2 men were already cutting themselves free, so Sasuke could not leave the spillway to help Naruto and Tsunade. They attacked again less than a minute later. Sasuke retreated toward the sealed lever and forced them into the narrowest section of the walkway. When one mercenary reached for the control, the explosive tag destroyed the handle and threw both men off balance. Sasuke used the opening to bind the chain wielder with his own weapon. The second mercenary withdrew toward the lower camp rather than risk being trapped on the damaged spillway. Sasuke stayed where Kakashi had ordered him and guarded the ruined control until the fighting ended. At the main clearing, Kakashi's left hand had become almost useless. Daigo finally committed to a finishing attack. He sent 12 wired needles into the air and formed a hand sign with his free hand. Wind chakra caught the poison mist and drove it toward Kakashi in a narrow wave. Kakashi had been waiting for him to use the wind technique. Large jutsu required Daigo to stop controlling some of the wires. For less than a second, 3 lines went slack. Kakashi moved through that opening. He took 1 needle through the edge of his vest, rather than waste time dodging it, slid under the poison cloud and struck Daigo's wrist before the man could change signs. Daigo tried to retreat. Kakashi wrapped one of the loose chakra wires around Daigo's own ankle and pulled. The medic fell hard. Kakashi put a kunai against his throat. The fight was over. Daigo smiled anyway. The main release had already started. Inside the control shed, Tsunade heard the pressure change. One of the drums began to vibrate. She had found the solution, but the timing system had moved faster after the spillway explosion. The left pipe needed to be clamped, while the pressure from the right drum was diverted into an empty maintenance tank. The manual wheel controlling that tank had rusted in place. Naruto created 6 clones and put all of them on the wheel. It moved an inch. The pressure inside the drum rose. Tsunade shouted for more force. Naruto created 4 more clones. His chakra dropped sharply. The wheel turned another quarter rotation. Then the damaged support beneath the shed shifted. A metal brace tore loose from the wall. One of the poison drums tilted toward the reservoir. Naruto sent 3 clones to catch it. The remaining clones lost leverage on the wheel. Tsunade could not leave the pipe assembly. If she did, the pressure would rupture the line. Naruto created more clones. His vision blurred. He was 12. His reserves were large for his age, but he had already spent chakra scouting, fighting, and maintaining repeated clones through the approach. The old Naruto could have flooded the entire platform with bodies, This Naruto could not. One clone vanished, then another. Naruto felt panic rise in his throat. He closed his eyes for half a second and found himself standing in front of the familiar gate. Kurama was already awake. The fox had felt everything. Naruto met Kurama's eyes and explained what was happening at the reservoir. The wheel was closing. If it closed completely, poison would reach the settlements downstream. He asked for help in the same tone he had used during their quiet visits, leaving the choice with the fox. Kurama stared at him. For years, this strange child had entered the seal and asked for nothing. Naruto had spoken to him. As if they had a history Kurama could not remember. He knew his name. He knew what angered him. He knew when to leave him alone. He had even apologized once for things Kurama insisted had never happened. Kurama still did not trust him, but he had spent years watching Naruto through his senses. The boy was telling the truth. A small pulse of red chakra crossed the space between them. Kurama told him not to mistake it for friendship. Naruto smiled. He said he would take it anyway. Warm chakra spread through his coils. It was tiny compared with the power Kurama would one day share with him. To a 12-year-old running on exhaustion, it felt enormous. Naruto created 6 fresh clones. They hit the wheel together. Tsunade held the pipe with both hands, controlling chakra through her fingers to keep the seal from tearing, while the pressure redirected. Halfway, 3/4, fully open. The maintenance tank shook as poison and compressed fluid diverted away from the reservoir. The drum stopped vibrating. For several seconds, neither of them moved. Then, Naruto's clones began disappearing one by one as he let them go. He sat down hard on the wet floor. Tsunade checked the pipes again before allowing herself to breathe. The water below remained clean. They had stopped it. Kakashi arrived less than 2 minutes later, carrying an unconscious Daigo over one shoulder. His left arm hung stiffly at his side. Tsunade took one look and ordered him to sit. Kakashi obeyed. That frightened Naruto more than the poison drums had. Reinforcements from Konoha's nearest eastern field post reached the reservoir before sunrise. The hawk Kakashi sent from Koseki had been redirected there rather than all the way to the village. Medical shinobi treated Kakashi and the captured mercenaries, while a second squad secured the reservoir road. Daigo's records led to storage sites, payment accounts, relief contracts, and distributors across the eastern region. The network survived in fragments, but its center was gone. Konoha and regional authorities spent the next several weeks following warehouses, relief contracts, and payment accounts. 2 local officials were arrested for taking a cut from Daigo's emergency sales. A merchant cooperative recovered enough money to keep the autumn grain route open. Several mercenary groups abandoned the eastern region once their payments stopped. The investigation also traveled farther than the criminals. Fire Country administrators learned that 3 districts had been using different rules for reporting medical emergencies. The daimyo's regional office approved funding for permanent antidote reserves at 2 border posts. Because the price of those supplies was far lower than the relief payments Daigo had been exploiting. Tsunade's analysis produced the practical answer that made those reforms useful. She taught the medics how to identify which chakra points reacted first, how to slow circulation through affected pathways, how to separate patients by exposure level, and how to adjust antidote doses for civilians and shinobi. The protocol fit on 6 pages. Copies reached every major medical post in Eastern Fire Country within a month. Shizune helped review the hospital version in Konoha and corrected 2 dosage tables before approving it for wider use. A River Country clinic requested a copy after one of Daigo's abandoned partners tried to sell the toxin there. Daigo's most profitable weapon became far less valuable, and Tsunade's influence had moved beyond Konoha before most people in the village even knew her name. Team 7 returned to Konoha, exhausted, dirty, and much quieter than when they had left. The village gates looked familiar, but the people waiting there belonged to a life Naruto had never had at 12. Mikoto was near the Uchiha Road because word of the mission had arrived ahead of them. She scolded Sasuke for looking half dead and handed him food. While Itachi examined the damage to his sleeve and asked with suspicious calm how many orders he had ignored. Sasuke insisted the number was lower than Kakashi claimed. Sakura had come from the hospital youth program with Mika and Shizune to help receive the returning medical supplies. She forgot to greet Sasuke for almost 30 seconds because she was busy asking Tsunade how the toxin reacted to chakra. Naruto noticed and decided the second world was capable of miracles after all. Mika immediately examined the strain in Tsunade's arm, while Tsunade complained that she could examine herself. Haru stood behind them and said that every stubborn patient in history had probably made the same argument. Naruto laughed. Then Mika asked whether he planned to stand by the gate all evening or come to dinner. Naruto answered that he was coming before he even thought about it. He stopped walking. Tsunade looked back at him. Naruto glanced toward the apartment district, where his old room waited. He still owned it. He still slept there most nights. It no longer felt like the only place in the world where he belonged. That difference had taken 5 years to build. After dinner, Naruto and Tsunade climbed onto the roof above her family's house. Konoha spread below them in warm windows and dark streets. Somewhere near the center, workers were repairing a hospital supply building using one of the organization systems Tsunade had introduced. Somewhere in the Uchiha district, Sasuke was probably pretending he was not exhausted. Inside Naruto's seal, Kurama had gone silent again, after giving him that small pulse of chakra. Naruto rested his arms on his knees. He reminded Tsunade of the promise she had made in the Hokage office at the end of their first lives. She asked, which promise? Naruto told her that she had said he would not have to grow up alone. This time, Tsunade looked down toward the kitchen window. Mika was cleaning dishes. Haru was complaining about something loudly enough to be heard through the glass. Then she looked back at Naruto. He had changed more than his strength. At 7, he had thanked her mother every few minutes. Because he was afraid kindness could disappear if he became inconvenient. At 12, he walked into the house, argued about dinner, stole food from Tsunade's plate, and left his sandals crooked by the door. Tsunade told him she remembered the promise. Naruto smiled and said she had kept it. She answered that their second lives had barely started. The next morning, Kakashi reported to Hiruzen. Daigo Ren's ledgers had been recovered intact. Most entries described criminal business, mercenary groups, smugglers, regional officials buying illegal stimulants, estate managers paying inflated emergency prices. 2 foreign distributors had already disappeared after learning Daigo was captured. One buyer stood apart from the rest. The name beside repeated orders for preserved tissue, chakra-reactive compounds, sedatives, old barrier components, and specialized antidotes was Orochimaru. Kakashi watched his face change. The third Hokage had not spoken to his former student in years. In this world, Orochimaru had never grown beside Tsunade. There had been no legendary Sannin team, tying him to Jiraiya and a Senju medic through decades of shared missions. Keide Mino had occupied the 3rd place on Hiruzen's team until the war killed her. Afterward, Jiraiya spent more time beyond the village, collecting intelligence. While Orochimaru buried himself in research earlier than the man Tsunade remembered. Some results looked familiar from a distance. Orochimaru was brilliant, increasingly willing to work through people Hiruzen did not trust. The road beneath those facts was different enough that neither Naruto nor Tsunade could safely guess where it ended. Hiruzen ordered a quiet investigation into the purchases. Then he opened the rest of Kakashi's report. Daigo's network had exposed more than one criminal. The regional medical system needed repair. The Eastern Field Post wanted permanent poison specialists. The Fire Country Administration wanted Konoha to send representatives to review emergency protocols across several districts. Shizune had already requested permission to expand the 6-page treatment procedure into a field manual. With Mika and the hospital poison unit, Hiruzen smiled faintly when he reached the name attached to half the original notes. Tsunade was 12. Somehow, a 12-year-old academy graduate was already changing how an entire region treated casualties. That was not the only change waiting on his desk. Shikaku had submitted a report showing that the Joint Security Board created after the Uchiha crisis had reduced internal response times and increased mission availability. Fugaku wanted the arrangement made permanent. The Hyuga had filed objections to the new clan oversight rules, while 2 branch representatives had quietly asked Hiruzen not to withdraw them. Kakashi's Team 7 had become part of a village whose institutions were moving in directions no history book from Naruto's first life could have predicted. Hiruzen set those reports aside and wrote one letter by hand. He sent it to Jiraiya. Several days later, far from Konoha, Jiraiya received the letter at a roadside inn. The first page concerned Orochimaru and the purchases recovered from Daigo Ren. Jiraiya read it twice. The preserved tissue worried him. The old barrier components worried him more. Kade had spent years developing some of the barrier methods Orochimaru was apparently buying from battlefield salvage dealers. And Jiraiya knew exactly how interested his former teammate had once been in understanding every technique used by the people around him. The second page described the wider changes in Konoha and summarized the team that had broken Daigo's network. Jiraiya skimmed Kakashi's name, paused at Naruto Uzumaki, and stopped completely at Tsunade of the Senju line. The name carried no old friendship for him. In his life, there had never been a Tsunade beside him on Hiruzen's team. Kaede Mino had filled that place until the war killed her. Still, something about the report bothered him. A 12-year-old Senju girl had reconstructed medical procedures Konoha had struggled to standardize for decades. She had also been one of the Academy children, who helped expose the root operation that nearly turned the Uchiha dispute into an armed seizure. Jiraiya knew coincidences happened. He also knew Hiruzen never wrote 3 pages about a coincidence. The final line asked him to return to Konoha and compare what he knew about Orochimaru's movements. Jiraiya paid for his room and changed his route before noon. Back in Konoha, Tsunade sat on a training post, while Naruto and Sasuke argued over which of them had done more work. At the reservoir, Kakashi had ordered light training until his poisoned arm fully recovered. Naruto interpreted light training as a rule aimed at other people. Sakura had stopped by on her way to the hospital, and was now telling Sasuke that Tsunade's medical contribution had obviously been more important than either boy's. Ino, passing with Choji, heard the argument and joined only because she enjoyed watching Sakura insult Sasuke by accident. Shikamaru sat beneath a tree and complained that the entire discussion could be solved by counting mission objectives. Kiba claimed Akamaru deserved credit, despite having been nowhere near the mission. Tsunade listened to the noise around her and remembered a first life, where most of these people had reached adulthood through grief, war, or both. This version would have its own losses. She was old enough inside to know that changing history did not mean creating a painless world. It did mean the losses were no longer scheduled. A messenger hawk crossed above the training ground toward the Hokage Tower. Tsunade watched it for a moment, then looked back, when Naruto accused Sasuke of counting unconscious enemies as teamwork. She had no idea Jiraiya was already traveling home. Naruto knew even less about Orochimaru's name in Daigo's ledger. He was more interested in whether Kurama's small gift at the reservoir had changed anything between them. That evening, he entered the seal. Kurama opened one red eye and asked whether the humans downstream had survived. Naruto said they had. The fox grunted and told him to leave. Naruto sat down in the shallow water anyway and began describing Sasuke's argument about mission credit. Kurama lasted almost 4 minutes before threatening to eat him. Far beyond Konoha, Daigo's failed shipment never reached the laboratory that had ordered it. A courier brought a coded message from the surviving distributor instead. Konoha had seized the eastern warehouses. The preserved tissue, sedatives, barrier fragments, and chakra-reactive compounds were gone. Orochimaru read the report in silence. The loss mattered, but the names attached to it interested him more. Kakashi Hatake, Sasuke Uchiha, Naruto Uzumaki, Tsunade of the Senju line. Kakashi's reputation was familiar. Sasuke belonged to a clan whose survival had changed the balance inside Konoha. Naruto was the fourth Hokage's son, and the Nine Tails Jinchuriki. Although most of the village still treated that truth carefully, Tsunade meant nothing to Orochimaru personally. That made the medical notes more interesting. A 12-year-old girl had identified a chakra-reactive toxin, adapted treatment under field conditions, and helped turn the result into a protocol now moving through Fire Country. The surname Senju added another question, but Orochimaru had learned long ago that bloodlines were most useful. When people stopped treating them like legends and started studying what they actually did, he closed the file and instructed his assistant to collect public records on Kakashi's team, the new Uchiha Security Board, and the medical changes spreading out of Konoha. He did not know that two members of Team 7 remembered another version of him. Naruto and Tsunade did not know what this version of Orochimaru wanted. Jiraiya was coming home with years of information neither of them possessed. Nawaki was alive in the north. Shizune had built a career without Tsunade. The Hyuga were beginning an argument that had barely existed in Naruto's first childhood. The Uchiha were alive and changing Konoha's military weight with every mission they accepted. 5 years earlier, Naruto had looked at 4 stone faces and believed he had returned to a story he already knew. By 12, that story was gone. He still had Tsunade beside him. He had a team. He had people who expected him at dinner. Kurama had chosen to help him once. Those victories belonged to this life and could not be erased by whatever came next. The rest of the shinobi world was moving beyond the edge of their memories.